Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 16.3 Beta 2 has been out for a few days, and iOS 16.2 has been out for a few weeks. I wanted to talk about the overall experience and all of the features of iOS 16.3. We'll also talk about the experience and your experience based off the YouTube community poll, where at the time of this video, there's about 8,300 votes and over 130 comments. So I've read all the comments to determine what the overall experience is like. iOS 16.2 seems to need an update. iOS 16.3 seems to have quite a few improvements. Now, as far as features, iOS 16.3 is so far turning out to be a smaller update than anticipated. It seems to have about 3 key updates, and the first one has to do with security keys. So if we go into our settings, tap our name, and then go to security, you can add a security key as long as it's a FIDO-enabled security key to log into iCloud, just like you can on different services. So this is a great update to allow for much better security overall, meaning that you physically have to be there in order to log in. Under Emergency SOS, they have an update where they've just changed some wording with call, withhold, and release. We saw that with Beta 2, and we also have a new option for call quietly. If you start an emergency call using the gesture, warning alarms and flashes will be silenced. So that's great. If you want to keep that enabled, you can, so it doesn't set off any or startle anybody around you if you need to use it in an emergency. Now, something Apple keeps changing is with Private Relay. When it's turned on, when you go to turn it off, they've just removed the third option. They keep changing this, so depending on what version you're on, this is actually an older version. If we turn that off, it used to say learn more. If you have iOS 16.2, it would say cancel. They keep changing this, and now there's just no other option. Just turn off until tomorrow or turn off Private Relay. Cancel seemed to make a lot of sense, but either way, you can turn it off and then just turn it right back on if you need to. When you have a HomePod nearby and you go to play some music, you can easily just send that music over, and some people are seeing a new splash screen. So that's something that's updated. Pretty small there. And then within Maps, they continue to make small changes to how you rate things. And also there's parking options now that was added to everyone this past week. If you're in a significant location, such as Carnegie Hall here, if we go to more, you'll see it will load and then give us parking options. So that's something that's available now, but they do change the ratings so that it looks a little different depending on where you are. Additionally, within settings, there's a bunch of code changes within accessibility. Whether or not we see some major changes like was rumored before, maybe we could see this with the release candidate or something else, but so far we're not seeing it. However, we do know that digital ID is coming to California very soon, according to California's governor. So when you add a card within the Wallet app, go to driver's license or state ID, soon you'll have an option for California. Now, they said they're going to do this differently than everywhere else, but it should be added within the driver license and state ID. All the additional states or different countries have to work directly with Apple, so you may or may not ever see this option here. But either way, it's available. It doesn't take the place of your physical ID. You can just use it instead of, but keep your physical ID on you or whatever you like. But either way, it should be here soon. Apple still has not added the update for Apple Classical Music, and we're still waiting for a few features, whether that be for accessibility or other things. They did recently add AI narration for books as well, so that's something they've recently updated where you have digital narration for books, and they sound really good. So if I hit play here, turn it up.
Had materialized ahead of us.
Movement in the greenhouse drew his eye, and a woman emerged.
So there's good enunciation and everything else. So we're having very minor feature updates, and this makes me think that is probably because iOS 17 is going to have far less changes as Apple gets ready for the Reality OS or XROS for their headset. So they're saving any major changes, whether that be split view or something else. It looks like iOS 16 is matured, unless they have something big planned with maybe a full redesign to match Reality OS or XROS for that headset. We're expecting to see that headset as soon as this spring before WWDC. So it could be more of a stability update. However, we are still waiting for next-gen CarPlay, third-party app stores, since that'll be mandated by the European Union, and hopefully split view. What else will be in iOS 17, we really don't know, and it's not looking very promising for a ton of features. But that could be a good thing as far as stability, or maybe a sign of redesigning it finally. It's been many years going from iOS 6, then to iOS 7, and since iOS 7, we really haven't had a major redesign. So it would really help to have something that's a little more modern, maybe some icon changes or some small changes here or there. Now, if you're really not enjoying iOS 16 and you're having issues with iOS 16.2, we'll talk about the bugs in a little bit. Downgrading from iOS 16 to iOS 15 can still be done using the RC file if you have access to that. If you're a developer, you downloaded that before, you can downgrade on supported devices. I was able to do it on my iPhone 8 Plus, but just keep in mind that most people will not be able to do that, and in the future, all of the features will be with iOS 16. Now, we have some known issues with iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. We have two, but Apple has acknowledged one of them finally with an internal memo. That has to do with when the phone is locked, you pick it up and turn it on. Many people are seeing lines go through the screen. So it looks like the display is bad, but it's actually a software related issue as opposed to a hardware issue. Apple acknowledged this according to Mac Rumors in an internal memo, and they said that it would be fixed with a future software update. That means it's coming soon and should address those issues. Now, that's why it surprised me so much that we didn't have an update this week. Also, there's that issue with iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max with the cameras where they seem to overprocess it. Now, I mentioned this a few weeks back, maybe a month or so. Others have mentioned this. Marcus Brownlee made a video about it. It seems to be something that more and more people are realizing. When you take a photo with the camera and then you actually see it afterwards, it looks like it's been processed too much, sometimes darkened, and just doesn't look like what you get in the camera itself. So when you're taking a photo in bright light, it looks pretty good, but when you're taking it in regular light, it seems to over darken it, sometimes be way over sharpened, and just be heavily processed. So let me know if you're still seeing that in your 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, and others say that it's been there for a long time with previous phones. Now, Apple did process them, but they never really darkened them. They seem to make them over bright or make the highlights too bright. Now it seems to be overly dark. And again, that's why I'm surprised we don't have iOS 16.2.1. I really thought we'd have it this past week. Last year we had it on the 12th with iOS 15.3.1. It released on the 12th to the public and fixed a bunch of bugs. This time around, I thought it would be this week. So at this point, I'm going to say it's going to be next week. Apple could, of course, change its mind, or they could wait until iOS 16.3. Now, iOS 16.3 could have another beta, or next week we could see a release candidate. Last year we had 15.3 release candidate after just two betas, and then we had a final release of iOS 15.3 in the last full week of January on the 26th. Typically, Apple's been following this year after year, but again, this year they could change things up. So we could have multiple betas and have a final release either at the end of January or into February or even March. Some people are rumoring saying it's in March. I think that's a stretch. It'll probably be sometime in January or early February with maybe iOS 15.4 or 16.4 rather in March. So I really expect some new updates very soon. I'm surprised we haven't seen a small public update with security patches and bug fixes. Now, as far as bugs, there are a lot of bugs in 16.2. Most of them seem to aim around stuttering and lockups and just slowness overall from time to time. Some people are saying they have that paste bug where it will prompt you every time you paste, but that's not necessarily a bug. Make sure that your app doesn't have that enabled. So here's an app that actually has it on my phone. If we go down to Hive, you'll see here there's an option to paste from other apps. Go into the app that continually prompts you and make sure it's on allow. Otherwise, it will ask or deny it every single time. So that's a feature that's there. The app developer can add that, and hopefully you have it if you're having that issue. I'm still seeing a lot of issues with Apple CarPlay. People are telling me regularly that it's just disconnecting and not working. Other people are saying that Wi-Fi keeps disconnecting. That was supposedly fixed before, but Wi-Fi seems to be a problem for a lot of people still. Not just on iOS, but iPadOS and macOS as well. An issue that seems to be consistently a problem across many devices is the AirPods Pro cases, or AirPods cases in general, not giving a battery status in the widget. So if we go over here, you can see it here when it pops up on the screen, but when you're actually using the AirPods, it doesn't give a status. Let's see if we can replicate that on this phone here. See what we've got. So for me, it's more of an issue that it just doesn't show the case at all. So some people show the case showing 0, or some don't see it at all. So that seems to be an ongoing issue I'm seeing and many others are seeing as well. Now, additionally, there's some issues with settings asking for passwords. That seems to have gone away for me with beta 2, so I'm not seeing that password prompt over and over. I am seeing on devices not on beta 2, but it seems to be an issue for 16.2 and others, and location this time is finally not using my location 100% of the time with 16.3 beta 2. So a lot of bugs seemingly have been fixed with the recent beta, and hopefully a lot of other things as well. The swipe home bug seems to be fixed also, so this is great news, although that sometimes can come back after a week or so. But what that is if we press play, swipe home, sometimes it will just be stuttery, and it doesn't have to be a dynamic island phone. Sometimes just swiping home in general on a phone, any of the phones with iOS 16.2 can be slow, and that was true with beta 1. Beta 2 so far has fixed that issue. Now, as far as overall battery life, it seems to be better than beta 1, but still not up to where I would like it to be. If we go back into our settings, we'll go up to battery here, and under battery health and charging, you'll see I'm at 99% battery health. You can see the cycle count off to the left here with Coconut Battery. It's a free app on the Mac. You can download it. It's outside the App Store. So if you want to use it, you can just see what your battery health is like on your iPhone, Mac, or iPad. And then let's take a look at the battery life overall. So yesterday, you'll see I had 3 hours and 15 minutes of screen active time, 3 hours and 47 minutes of screen idle time. I used about 60% of the battery. Today, so far, it's 2 hours and 57 minutes, and it's about 50% of the battery. So before I used a little bit more. However, it's much better than it was when I was at CES, for example. I only had 2 hours and 40 minutes and used 75% of the battery. So it's improving for me, but it's still not where it should be for a 14 Pro Max. Others are having different experiences though. So thanks to Nate for sending in his battery on the Telegram channel. Those are linked in the description along with Discord. And he's on an iPhone 13 Pro Max with 97% or 98% battery life. You'll see he had 9 hours and 22 minutes of screen on time, 38 minutes of screen off time, and used under 75% of his battery. That's what the battery life should be like, and it's doing pretty well for him. As far as overall performance, so far it's quite good. It's quite smooth. ProMotion is what you would expect. Swiping is what you would expect. And that's true on older devices as well. Now with the iPad, I'm running iPadOS 16.2. Overall, it's been fairly stable compared to iOS. My overall experience is smooth. There's a few bugs with YouTube, but that seems to be the app. And if we go into settings and under battery, again, here's my battery health. You can see here that today it was actually okay. 2 hours and 58 minutes of screen on time, 23 minutes of screen off time, and I charged it to 100% this morning. So it's actually doing quite well that way. I'm getting about 6 hours of screen on time. I wish it was more, but so far it's okay. It's better than it was before, but it's on 16.2, so hopefully it improves with future updates. As far as the heat of the phone, it's staying nice and cool, at least on 16.3 beta 2. It's been cooler than normal just filming this video. Typically when I leave my screen on this long, it gets a little bit warm. It's nice and cool to the touch, so it's really good that way. And let me show you with the thermal camera quickly. So with the thermal camera in the hottest part, we're at about 83 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's pretty good. Not bad at all. It's staying nice and cool as you would expect. Now, a little while ago, I did run benchmarks, and they're actually not as good as we had previously, by just a little bit though. So this time around, they're quite good. January 13th, you'll see here, I had 1,867 for single core, 5,282 for multi-core. If we go back and take a look at what we had the day we installed it, we're just a little bit higher at 1,883 versus 1,867. So a little bit higher on both the single and multi-core before, but either way, it's within 20. It's not that big of a deal at all. You really wouldn't notice a difference there. And like I said, it's staying nice and cool. It's working better than it has for quite some time. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of your comments. iOS 16.2, take a picture with Apple RAW and view send from the camera to iMessage. It gets stuck preparing every time. Ridiculous. Jeremy DeBose said iOS 16.3 beta 2, 14 Pro Max. iMessage freezes once a day or so. Yesterday, photos froze. Sometimes I have to restart to get them to work. Battery and everything else have been really good. And I saw your tweet about this, and this was the first time I've seen anyone report this on the most recent beta. So if you're on the beta with beta 2, I'd love to hear if you're having the same issue. Most of the freezing seems to be on 16.2 though. I'm using 16.2. It's really good for performance, but to be honest, I've never seen so many bugs at once. My phone gets really hot now, and I don't really know what to do. Wish I could go back to iOS 15. So again, everyone's experience is a little bit different, but the phone getting too warm isn't too much of a deal, as it's going to be processing in the background if you're playing games and more. But either way, it should be what it was like when you picked it up for the first time. Shivam Krishan said, I'm on iOS 16.2 and Swipe to Go Home has severe stutters very often. iPhone 11. Mr. Austin Felt says, I'm running iOS 16.2 on my iPhone 13 mini, and I'm having no issues except for the AirPods Pro case bug. I really hope that Apple fixes the AirPods Pro case bug. It doesn't show the battery percentage, charges, or even drains the battery. I've tried to reset them and got nothing. Please help. And like I mentioned before, it's a known bug, so hopefully they fix it with a most recent update. Beta 2 is fixing it for some, but let me know again if you have beta 2 if it's fixed for you. Severe battery drain here, getting 3 to 4 hours of screen on time on a brand new 14 Pro. Checked with Apple's Genius Bar appointment that hardware-wise my device is fine. This is so frustrating. This seems to be common, and I'm assuming you're on 16.2, I don't really know, but either way it seems to be fairly common and something people are quite frustrated with, getting very poor battery life lately. And so that's everything with iOS 16.2 and iOS 16.3 Beta 2. Hopefully we get an update very soon for the public. And then, of course, we should get another beta or release candidate next week with iOS 16.3 Beta 3 or iOS 16.3 RC. Let me know your experience in the comments below. And if there's anything else you'd like me to cover in these weekend follow-up videos that I've been doing for many years, I'm always willing to maybe improve them or change them up a little bit. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, it will be linked in the description. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.